Hey, good morning, everyone. Welcome to the TradeStation Masterclass. My name is Jesus Nava. I'm the Director of Client Training and Education for TradeStation Securities. And today we're going to talk about Radarscreen and some of the things that are probably not very visible on the Radarscreen application. So I decided to do a session on some of the tools that you can use that'll make your use of the Radarscreen application just a tad bit easier. The title is Radarscreen Templates, Study Groups, and Preferences. There's no content for me to share with you in the form of a download, so we're just going to jump over to the TradeStation platform and get our hands on the Radarscreen app. But before we do so, here are some important disclosures. Just keep in mind that every symbol and idea that I talk about is for educational purposes only. It is not a recommendation of TradeStation. Also, that active trading is not suitable for everyone, and that past historical performance is no guarantee of future results. If anybody needs additional information on disclosures, there is a link right here on the second paragraph, www.tradestation.com/important-information, and you'll find more details there. Okay, let's go ahead and switch over to TradeStation and get started on our presentation. Let's go here and open up the Radarscreen app. There's a couple of things on my Radarscreen app that are different than what the Radarscreen looks like by default. So if you open up Radarscreen on your TradeStation, it may look a little bit different than mine. One of those things is, for example, this column right here, description. I think I've added that myself. A lot of times I like to have a description column because it provides me the name of the symbol that I'm typing in. So if I type in the symbol, let's say that I type in HD and I hit enter, I know that that's Home Depot. I mean, I knew that HD was Home Depot, but a lot of times, you have a whole list of symbols that you add into the Radarscreen window, and it's hard to tell which one's which just by the acronym. For example, let me just go here to data, add symbol list. Let's say that we used the Dow Jones Industrial. I mean, those are very commonly used symbols. So a lot of these symbols you may know by heart, but sometimes you kind of get stuck at one and you say, what is this symbol that I'm looking at? Like HON. HON is not a symbol that I use in my examples a lot, but that's Honeywell. I know that's okay. That's a company that does, I think they do thermostats, right? I'm not sure if they do any other type of devices, but I know them for their thermostats. I think it's the same company, if I'm not mistaken. But for example, here you have TRV, which is the Travelers Company. Is it Truvia? I'm not sure if it's the same, but it could be. Okay. But now the description column, of course, is going to provide you a little bit more detail. So, and you saw that the description columns comes on by default every time that I open up Radarscreen. That's the tricky part right there, because in order for you to do that, you have to go into study groups to create that. So let's go ahead and talk about that a little bit. So you're going to have to decide. You don't have to, but it just makes sense for you to do it beforehand, before opening up Radarscreen, because there are going to be a selected group of columns that you're going to want to see at all times. I like to see description, but maybe there's a whole set of columns that you want to show up by default, so that every time you open up Radarscreen, you don't have to do the manual work. So in order for you to set the custom columns that show up in Radarscreen, you have to create what's called a study group. First, set your Radarscreen the way you want. For example, let's say that I want to remove the bid and ask. I don't want bid and ask. I'm going to highlight those two columns and I'm going to press delete. All right, I'm not going to use volume today. Oh, let's do volume today. I'm just going to leave it there. I'm just going to add a couple more columns that I want to use in some occasions. For example, volume average is one of those columns. I'm going to add it. Maybe move it down, because volume average gives me not only the total volume today, but it gives me the interval, kind of intraday access to volume, to see if there's any intraday volume that may be interesting in the symbol that I'm watching. So maybe I'm adding volume average. Maybe I'm also adding the average true range. Maybe because I'm setting up some stops or targets based on average to range, and I want to see what that value is. In fact, let me come here at the volume today. Let me remove it. I'm just going to leave the average in here. And maybe I'm also looking at ADX, just to see if markets are trending or not, or if the overall market is trending, which one is trending with the most strength, because ADX is just a measure of strength. It doesn't give you a direction per se. It doesn't say if it's bullish or bearish, but it does tell you when the price is moving significantly, either up or down. So maybe I want those 3 columns. Let me go ahead and click OK. All right, that's how my 3 additional columns look like. All right, I don't need this column right here, so I'm going to remove it. So I'm going to go to Studies, Show Hide Plots, and remove the 0 line, because I think any formatting that you do right here, I think it'll be saved to the study group. So here, for example, the ADX, I don't need this trigger level column that shows 20 all the way down, so I'm just going to remove it as well. So, okay, this is the way that I want it. And what I'm going to do right now is, if you want your radar screen to come up this way all the time, you go to the Studies button right here on the top, and you click on Save Study Group. All right, you can see that over here on the right-hand side, you have all the columns that you have in the current display, and everything is checked. So this is like a last step or a last opportunity for you to uncheck anything you don't want. I want everything. And I'm going to give that a name. I'm going to call this vol AVG ATR ADX. Okay, so it's a descriptive name. Usually I know what indicators are added to my radar screen. And if I want to set this as the default, you can just check the box here that says automatically add on new radar screen quotes windows. By checking this, this is like setting the default. So I'm going to click OK. And I already saved the group and made it the default. So if I close this radar screen and I open up a new one, you will see that this radar screen already has my volume average, average true range, and ADX. So I can very quickly come here and say, give me the Dow Jones Industrial. Let me remove the top 2 rows. And this is what it looks like. Let me resize the columns here a little bit. I'm not sure if the width of the column is saved into the, I don't think it is. It's not saved into the study group, but I think it's saved into the style, the template. But the nice thing about the studies is that any columns that you disable, like for example, we had a trigger level right here for the ADX, and we had a 0 line here in the volume average. We had unchecked those sub columns, and now they don't show up. So anytime you want to modify the look of your radar screen, this is the way to do it. So again, first thing you need to do is set your radar screen to the columns you want. And then once you have it the way you want, save it as a study group and set it as a default. It doesn't say default, but it says automatically add on a new radar screen window, which makes it very convenient. Now, you can have multiple study groups, and that's something very convenient as well, because you can see multiple columns. Sometimes if you follow multiple technical analysis or technical indicators, and you don't want to have them all visible at the same time, you can create different groups and replace them as you go along. So if I come over here to Studies and I go to Edit, Add Study Group, I can choose to find, let's see, financial strength. That's one based on fundamental data. There's a checkbox that says replace existing studies, because you can either add to what's already there. My intention here is to replace. So I'm going to leave this checkbox checked so that it just takes over the whole radar screen. I'm going to click OK. And this is financial strength. A little bit tight, but I can just resize it so that I can see all the different columns and the subheadings and what each one of these values is. All right, so this is the financial strength study group that's already built into the TradeStation platform. Anybody can pull it up and see what the financial strength is for all the companies you have inside of the Radarscreen. Take a look at it. Removed the columns that I had for volume average, ATR, and ADX, and it also removed the description column because every study group has its own set of columns. Now, if I come here and I say studies, add study group, and I choose the one that I just created a moment ago, which is this one down here, volume AVG, ATR, and ADX. And let's say that I don't want to replace, maybe I want to just add. When I click OK, then in addition to having my financial strength columns, take a look at what's happening here on the right. I have description. This is interesting because it actually repeats all the columns again. So maybe that's not the way that I want things to behave. Yeah, because I would have expected, the two study groups to look at each other and say, well, you already have last in there. Why are you adding it a second time? Notice that it says last two and net change to and net percent change to, because they existed on my Radarscreen before and I just duplicated them. So I would have thought that, the study groups were a little bit smarter and they would say, hey, you already have that. Let's just skip it. So this is not something that I would do on my Radarscreen unless the study groups that I create don't have these other columns as part of them, because you can just have a study group that has 3 columns: volume average, average true range, and ADX. So let's do that again. Let me remove all this, starting from symbol all the way over here, and let's delete. And okay, what just happened? There's no undo, so I'm going to go to studies, add study group, and let me go back in here to this one. Okay. And notice what's happening over here too. This is kind of a bug because it's leaving these pluses in between. This is just to add additional studies, and they shouldn't stay there. That's interesting. So if I add this again, studies, add study group, and I add it a second time, everything is repeated. So you have all those columns repeated twice. So when you create a study group, if you go to studies and you click on study group, save study group, then that's why these checkboxes come in very handy, because maybe you don't need, last, net change, and percent change, because those are always coming on. Maybe you just want to select, the 3 indicators that you added: the volume average, the average true range, and the ADX. All right, so let me not go ahead and cancel. Let me cancel this and delete all this right here. All right, so hopefully that makes sense. Notice that I have these I have 4 pluses. I have one here, another one here, and then I have 2 at the very end. That's definitely a bug. So somebody that was testing Radarscreen was not testing this part, and I don't need all those pluses. The thing is that I cannot remove that plus, remove symbol row, analysis technique. See, it doesn't go away. Right click, analysis technique. Yeah, it doesn't go away. So just wanted to show you this because this is going to come very helpful for you to replace analysis techniques in Radarscreen. Another thing that I wanted to show you here in Radarscreen is the style. If I open up my Radarscreen window and I add some symbols in here, let's go to data, add symbol list, and go to the Dow Jones Industrial just for ease. Remove the title, and I have all my studies. I have a few things that I've changed here, which is the font size, the style of the font. I've made it bolder. So those are things that you can change in your Radarscreen as well. It just creates better visibility of the data. In my opinion, the default is very thin, the font. Now you may like it because that's just a preference thing, but I like my font a little bit bigger, especially for these classes. I just like my symbols to show up bigger so that it's easier to see. But let me go ahead and show you where you can stylize that. You know, you can go to settings and click on page. Settings page gives you the ability to go to the font and change the font for the grid values and the headings. The headings are the column headers, and the grid values, well, it's very much intuitive that it's everything else. You know, and you can change the font of each one of those components. You can also change the color. Here we have a lot more properties, but you can change the headers, you can change the symbol column, you can change the grid, you can change many things about the radar screens. I would look at all the things that are available here. By the way, right now, if you have any questions about any of the items that are listed here, let me know right there in the chat and I'll make sure to explain what it refers to. Displayed values is everything that is right here inside the radar screen. You know, headings with history refer to, you know, these indicators that use historical data. That's what a heading with history means. It just uses historical data. And you can change every one of these single properties. So let's suppose that I want the color of my displayed values to have a darker blue, maybe darker than what's there. So I'm going to go here to the drop down, click on other. I'm going to go here to custom, and I'm going to make that blue darker, almost black, but not quite, because I just want to make it dark blue. These are the dark blue. And for the symbol column, I'm going to go to the symbol column, and I'm going to make that maybe a brighter blue. All right, that's going to be a brighter blue. And let's see, update indication. Right now it's black. Let's make it a little bit brighter. I'll make it this color right here. Maybe it's a little bit too bright. Let's go here a little darker. Okay. And now maybe the headers right here, I'll do the inverse. Let's go ahead and see the headers. I'll make the background, I'll make it light gray and the foreground black. And for the headings with history, so that they stand out, I'm going to make the foreground a blue. Okay. And I'm just going to click OK. So take a look that changes everything inside of my radar screen. I'm going to resize the columns here because I want it to be a little bit smaller than what it is right now. I think the columns are a little bit too wide. But as that changed everything inside of my radar screen, you can see that, oh, that's something interesting. You know, the columns here that are using history did not change. Go here to settings page, because I thought I did headings with history. The foreground is supposed to be blue. Let's switch these colors to see what happens. I'm going to make these right here like that. Yeah, that's not changing the column headers. I think that's a bug too. All right, so if you change, you know, your colors like I just did, you have to come here to settings and template. Everything that is a style, like font, colors, is considered a style change or a template. So I'm going to save that as my template. I'm going to call this bluish. Bluish, and I'm just going to click OK. I didn't set, you know, if I go here to settings and I go to templates and save the template, you can set it as a default. Setting it as a default means that every time you open up Radarscreen, will have these same colors. I didn't do that because I didn't want to set it as a default, but because now if I open a second Radarscreen, let me go to apps and Radarscreen, it'll be exactly as I left it before. So I can just have a list of symbols here, and you can see that it doesn't have that blue color. The size of the columns is what bothers me a little bit, you know, because let's see what happens. Let me close out this Radarscreen and let me open up a new one more time. So this is my new Radarscreen. The columns are kind of wide. Let me add a list of symbols in here. And what I'm going to do then is go to settings, templates, and apply a template. Let's do that bluish one that we just created. I'm going to click OK. So that doesn't quite change the thickness of the columns. Let me see if that is saved into the study group. I'm going to resize this because I really don't like the fact that Radarscreen makes my columns wider than what they should. And it's a pain to have to do this manually. But let's see, let's save that into the group. Let's save that into the study group. Studies, save study group. This is the one that I created earlier, the AVG ATR ADX. I'm going to click OK. Do you want to overwrite? I'm going to say yes. So when I close it and I reopen it, if I reopen it and the columns are back to the wider mode, then I know it's a bug too. Are they wide? Yeah, they are kind of wide. Not much though. Let's go to the study group. Yeah, they're back to how they were showing. I'm not sure if this is happening to anyone on your radar screen, but this should not be. This should keep the column width the same it is, you know. So let me go to settings, templates, apply template, and let me do bluish. There it is. That doesn't change the thickness or the how wide the columns are, which it's a pain. I think it's a pain, but once you have a radar screen inside of a workspace, I suppose that you guys are saving it to your trade station. So by saving it, it should pull up the same way that you're saving it. Let me just confirm that. I'm just going to resize the columns one more time. I mean, you can double click right on the column divider. That sets, you know, the column width to just enough to see the values. I don't like that either because it seems like it just puts everything together. I'd like to have a little bit more space in between the columns. So here it is. I'm going to save this into a new workspace, file, workspaces, save workspace. I'm going to call this the radar screen. Okay, and then I'm just going to close it. So now if I go to File, Workspaces, Open Workspace, and open up the Radarscreen workspace that I just created, everything should be exactly the same, and it is. But there's a couple of things that I just showed you today. The columns specification or the studies that you want to have inside of your Radarscreen are set by the study group. So that's studies and save study group. You can go to edit study groups and set the default here. Remember that you can just select any of the ones here, or you can go here at the bottom where it says automatically add into new Radarscreen quotes windows. You can set the default there. But the style, the colors, and the grid and the headers, everything is changed in settings and page. You first have to change the colors, the fonts, and the grid and everything else in here. And once you've set your Radarscreen the way you want, you come back to settings and go to templates and save a template. So two different things, and they each one control a particular set of things inside of Radarscreen. Okay, let's talk about preferences in Radarscreen a little bit because that's also part of this class. In the preferences dialog, you have in the general tab, mouse options. Use single click to update window link group, or use double click to update window link group. What that refers to is window linking. By default, when you have a chart open, let me open up a chart here on the right-hand side. Apps, chart analysis. I'm going to resize it. And then I'm going to link it by using the linking buttons up here. So the default is that anytime you click on the symbol once here on the left-hand side, the chart updates automatically to that symbol with one single click. The preference here means that it would require a double click to update the window. So now the symbol in my chart is Goldman Sachs. If I click on Walmart once, that doesn't change the symbol here on the chart. I would have to double click on Walmart for the chart update. So that's just a preference. I like the single clicks, but if you want to do double clicks instead, that's up to you. I know that other platforms support double clicking, and if you've gotten used to that, then maybe you want to change it to a double click as well. Alerts, reset alerts at specified time. A lot of times we have columns that are keeping track of our alerts. And when you have past triggered alerts, those little boxes stay, like showing you that you had an alert here, but it's not valid anymore. This checkbox right here resets the alert so that it cleans out your radar screen of any of those past triggered alerts, just like starting from scratch, resetting your alert. And data correction indicators, that's just a little C that shows up next to the symbol whenever the market sends a correction. The visibility of a correction is sometimes important because it does tell you, hey, there's a correction in the data, we or the platform hasn't applied it, and it gives you the option to apply it or not. And the grid, create label row when adding symbol lists, that's something that's, I always find myself deleting the label row every time that I insert a list. Let me show you. Let me cancel out of this, and remove all these symbols. When I add, for example, the Dow Jones Industrial, it creates this label row automatically, Dow Jones Industrial Average. So here, settings, and going into preferences, you can choose not to create a label row so that when let me do that one more time. When I add the list of symbols, it doesn't add the label row. I do have the very first symbol, which is the index. I wish it didn't include the index either. I always come back and delete the index as well. If you're adding the components of an index, I feel like I shouldn't have the index inside of the list as well. So let's go here back to preferences. All right, and under templates, all right, this is the default template. You can also set it here inside the preferences. Notice that bluish is the one that we created just now, and it appears there, and I can set it as a default by coming here. Okay, I'm just going to leave it on classic black. Classic black is the one that's built into the TradeStation platform. So what I did is I just changed the font size and the style. I made it bold, and I just overwrote the black or the classic black. So classic black in your radar screen will be the default one. The thinner and the smaller font size. Mine is a little bit bigger because I overwrote it, and you can do that as well on your TradeStation if you want to. And take a look at the other ones. A lot of these, may offer you a style that you like a little bit. Okay, let's go here to tooltips, because this radar screen tooltip is when you hover on any symbol, it'll tell you what the symbol is. Now, you can change what the tooltip is showing you. Here's a preview of what the tooltip is. It tells you what the name of the symbol is, what the exchange is, and what the interval settings is. So if I come and hover over Walmart, that information is inside of that yellow tooltip. It says Walmart Incorporated, NYSE, 5 minutes. That, of course, you have control over by going here into preferences, tooltips. And, if you don't like any of these, just let's say that I don't want to see the interval settings. I just highlight it, I press the backspace, and now I should only see the description and exchange. Walmart. Notice that I don't see the interval anymore. Settings, preferences, and that is right here. You can add all this information, session information, minutes delayed, if you want to do that. So, and you can be selective as to what type of asset class this applies to. All right, and so that's it. Preferences are not that difficult to go through, but I want everybody to be aware of what is possible inside of Radarscreen to make it behave the way you want. So we covered 3 things: study groups, templates, and preferences. Hopefully this gives you a little bit of information about how to customize this. I don't see any questions in the chat. Are there any questions about this feature of or anything you guys have been trying to do, please let me know right there in the chat. I'll give you guys a minute or two. In fact, let me go ahead and enable your microphones in case you want to speak your question. That's up to you as well. All right. So anything going on that you guys want to talk about? And I'll pull up the disclosures just as a closing slide. Our compliance team feels that we should have the disclosures not only shown at the very beginning, but also at the very end. But it's okay. I can comply. All right, guys. I think that's it then. I don't see any questions in the chat. I don't see anybody raising their hand. So I want to appreciate the time that you spent with me here today. Have a wonderful afternoon, and I'll see you next class. Tomorrow, I think we have Ask the Expert at 11:30, which is specifically dedicated for your questions. And then we're going to have a technical analysis class on Fibonacci tools. I'll show you some of the technicalities of Fibonacci inside of TradeStation and how you can customize those. Thank you so much for your support. Have a wonderful day. Goodbye, everyone. See you next time.